Hey everybody, Rob Drieslein here. We're going to record a special segment of Outdoor News Radio with Tim Lesmeister. And we're going to also serve this up on Facebook and some of our other social media platforms, YouTube, our YouTube channel. So check that out. With that, I will kick it off. Hey everybody, welcome back to our final segment of this week's broadcast of Outdoor News Radio. I've got Tim Lesmeister with me to help me wrap it up. Read Tim's blog at outdoornews.com or give us a call at 800-535-5191 if you are interested in subscribing to the print version. Hello, Tim. How are you doing up there on Madeline Island?
Doing great. Notice I'm wearing a cap today. I checked out some of my earlier broadcasts, and I see because I'm sitting next to this window that I would have this big glare spot coming off the side of my head. So I decided today I'm going to put on a cap.
All right.
So that I won't have this reflection coming off the top of my bald noggin.
I'm sure viewers will appreciate that. Radio probably won't appreciate it quite as much.
I know, on the radio, who cares? I just noticed from the video here, it makes sense to wear a cap.
We had a nice cool spell come through after that tropical depression drove all that heat up, and then it got pushed out here midweek. We talked to Tackle Terry about fishing a little bit earlier and about cold fronts and what they mean, but I wanted to get your take on my column. It's something Spielman and I did not talk about earlier in the show. Tim, I am writing a piece that's going to appear in an upcoming edition of Outdoor News about golden retrievers. And I just was making some calls to some kennels, and one gal from Wisconsin said, I really don't need a story about promoting dogs right now. She said, my phone has been ringing off the hook. And it's kind of amazing. Apparently, Tim, everybody is working from home, and they looked around and said, golly, the place could use a dog.
Isn't that amazing? It's amazing to me that just because you're home for a short stint while this virus kind of goes through its program, that we're dealing with a situation where you'd want to add an animal to the mix. Animals are quite time-consuming. It's almost like having a baby in the house. You have to basically train them initially so that they'll go outside to relieve themselves. And that's actually takes a lot of work, not to mention the other training that's involved, just basically the heel, here, sit commands that have to be instilled in them, as well as, the commands so that they don't get into trouble by chewing on furniture or getting into things they're not supposed to. And not to mention when people can start coming around again, I don't think right now most animals can be acclimated to other individuals, and that's going to be a real problem, especially if they get territorial. Some of these animals are going to get mean when other people come to visit.
Well, I think a lot of folks probably believe that they're going to be able to work from home permanently. I think there is a vibe out there among some people and some businesses that why this is working pretty well, why wouldn't we allow people to continue working from home? So I think maybe that's part of what is driving it. I thought it was very interesting, Tim, that not only is this kennels for some quality animals, but even animal shelters. I talked to a really great source, a gal here, a PR person for a big Twin Cities-based animal shelter. They've got 4 shelters, Animal Humane Society of the Twin Cities or something like that. Not to be confused with Humane Society of the United States. I want to be very clear about that. That is a national anti-hunting, anti-trapping organization. Your local animal shelters, which typically call themselves humane societies, are not affiliated with that organization. So I want to be real clear about that. But she was great. And I don't know if you saw her quote there, Tim, where she said, if they get a puppy right now, they have 200 applicants for it. There's so much demand for pets, for giveaways, for shelters. And then what really shocked me, Tim, was they get 100 applicants for a cat.
That's really shocking because, to me, I don't know that people realize this, but the majority of individuals out there are allergic to cat dander, and then they bring these cats into their home and they find out that my eyes are watery and itchy and I can't breathe. Yeah. And then the cat ends up going back to the pound anyway. So, and I would venture to say that most of these, well, actually what happens is most of these people just let the cats outside and forget about them.
Yeah, nice.
And then they go feral and start killing everything around. But the dogs are going to go back too. Here's the bad part about this whole scenario is that eventually all of these dogs are going to end up back in the pound, and they're going to be called rescue animals because people are going to have to go rescue them from this sad life that they're living behind this door to the cage. So I'm thinking the situation that's going on right now may be short term good, but it's going to be long term really bad.
Couple points. One, the only good thing about my wife being allergic to dogs is that she's also allergic to cats. So at least I don't have to have a cat in the house. When I spoke to these Twin Cities animal shelter people, Tim, they made it sound like there's regularly a shortage of animals in Minnesota and around the region and in the Northeast. That these regions have a pretty good reputation for we love our animals up here. And there's usually not a glut of animals in shelters in this part of the state now, or this part of the country. Now, in 6 months to a year, if a lot of people do go back to work, is there going to be more? Probably. One thing she told me that was interesting is they're going to bring in a shipment of pets, or animals rather, from the southern part of the country, places like Texas and the deep south, where there's a lot more stray dogs. People dump pets. There's more poverty down there. People are more willing to just dump their pet and get rid of it. And she expects they'll be rounding up a batch and hauling them up here to become rescues in this part of the country.
Oh, boy, isn't that great? None of those dogs will be able to understand these Minnesotans because they speak with a totally different accent.
Yeah, let's get a bunch of pit bulls from Mississippi. That's just what we need up here, huh? But anyway.
I don't know. I don't think people realize just how much work it is to own an animal until they get one. And I do believe that a lot of animals suffer because when these individuals get them, they don't understand that you have to take these animals out and exercise them every day. You have to put them through a training regimen. You have to do a lot of things that require a lot of effort. And after a month or two, the animal is the thing that suffers.
A gal made one kind of fun point about the exercise thing, Tim, is that, there are people home and they've got time and they're out more. And she said some people are calling and they're bragging about, I've been exercising with my dog for 5 hours a day. She's like, time out here. Some of these animals aren't necessarily meant to do that. And that's odd for us to talk about because we think of sporting breeds that can go all day. As long as you give them good water and the right temperature, cool them down, the sporting breeds can run hard. But I do envision some pug or bulldog that's going out for a run for several hours a day. It's just not they're just not bred for that kind of mileage.
Yeah, guy's on his bicycle with his Chihuahua.
Right? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, come on, I won't keep up.
But got some good advice from Josh Miller, who I believe acquired Dennis Anderson's British Lab kennel a couple of years ago or a few years ago. He's been at Game Fair, making I thought a real solid point that it's important that young dogs especially, get some separation time because everybody's sitting around home right now and they're with these pets 24/7, and that's not reality for most pets. Most pets is that their owners are going to go away, and they're going to have separation anxiety if you don't train for that now. And he said that means putting the dog in the crate for maybe part of the day. Maybe letting someone else dog sit the animal for all or part of a day or a weekend. I thought that was good advice, and I that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what Josh was saying. I'm not an expert on this, but if you have a dog, I think that's something worth investigating.
That and acclimating the animal to more people as well. That's something that Lita Blom, who is a tremendous dog trainer, and I probably shouldn't be mentioning this because she's probably swamped right now herself, says that you should acclimate that dog. Whenever she gets a new dog in for training, she always takes it out and she gets it around kids and she gets it around people, and these puppies get a lot of attention and they really love that. And every day you won't be able to do that, but at least a couple times a week you should try to get them around other people, get this animal around individuals that are going to pet it and love it and roll around with it so that it can get used to being around other people. What's going to happen if you don't do that is the dog's going to get very territorial, and when someone comes over to your house, they're going to want to protect it. And here's another thing that's going to happen if you don't do some separation. As soon as you do have to leave to go somewhere for a day, that dog's going to tear up your couch and rip down all your curtains, and you're going to wonder why. There's a lot of things you need to do.
Yeah,
think about it.
Good advice there, Tim. This is Outdoor News Radio. Rob Drieslein with Tim Lesmeister. Just a couple minutes left here of this week's broadcast. Tim, I see the latest on the Canada border situation. Looks like it's going to go into July, right, before we open the border. That's what Reuters reported earlier this week. I don't know if that's changing. I hope it doesn't go that long. But a lot of Americans who normally would go to Canada to do some fishing, take a week-long fishing trip up there, are choosing to stay home. Maybe not choosing because they have to, because the border is closed. But I wonder what that's going to mean long-term, if there were some resorts out there in the States that are going to establish new relationships with customers because they've had to take this break and not go north of the border.
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as you break a tradition, it's really hard to reestablish it. And that's what's happening right now. Traditionally, many individuals go up to Canada every year and they stay at the same resort and they fish there and they love it. But now all of a sudden you've broken the tradition. They've gone somewhere else, usually somewhere that's kind of similar. So I would imagine a lot of Iowans, Minnesotans, Wisconsin people, Illinois people that go to Canada regularly are going to end up at resorts in Minnesota, are going to end up at resorts in Wisconsin. And they're going to say, geez, this is pretty nice here. We should come back. It's a lot less expensive. We don't go through customs. And this is going to change. And those resorts up in Canada are the ones that are suffering. I cannot believe right now that Canada still maintains a closed border. It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of macro issues there that we don't necessarily have to get into. Tim, is it consistent with what you're seeing? I mean, you're kind of in resort country up there, or maybe not so much Madeline Island, but you certainly travel through it. Are you seeing a lot of tourism disproportionate to past years? How are things going in your neck of the woods?
I'm amazed. It's almost like the coronavirus doesn't exist anymore. When they open up the campgrounds here in Wisconsin, boom, everybody comes and they fill up. And the same with the resorts around Hayward area right now. The resorts are booming. A couple of the guides there are telling me that they're booked solid. And so I'm seeing a lot of the people that were stuck inside now have the ability to get out and do some things. They're taking advantage of the situation. I'm totally amazed. I was in Bayfield the other day. All the shops are open. The streets were packed and the ferry's full. It looks to me like the campgrounds here in the town park and the state park are going to be filled up here by the 4th of July. It's totally amazing to me.
And Tim, did I see some pictures of you and Ray contemplating doing some cliff diving or cliff jumping there on Madeline Island?
Yeah, we were out in the state park here, and normally that cliff is packed with people and they're all jumping into the water, but it's still just a little too cold.
Well, it's cold water even in the peak of summer there on Lake Superior.
That's true, but now it's manageable. Right now, it's numbing.
Yeah. And as you know, Tim, we visited you up there a few years back when we had that foreign exchange student visiting us from Switzerland. We kayaked out to that spot and climbed up, and the kids, that girl from Switzerland and my sons, all three of them, all jumped off that cliff multiple times. They had a great time. That's a neat spot.
It is neat. I always get a kick out of it because here's some old guy like me standing up there looking down that 15, 18 feet and there. Oh, I don't know if I want to jump. And then some 5-year-old comes running by you. Hey!
that would be my kids. That was Jameson, my youngest, was about that age when he did it there a few years ago. Yeah, great stuff. Tim, I'm afraid we're out of time, but good catching up with you, my friend.
We'll see you soon.
All right, we'll talk. Maybe next week we'll have Tim back and get into some fishing topics. We had T3 with us this week to go over walleye rigging and those sorts of matters. With that, Tim, thanks, and I want to thank all our other guests, all of our listeners who joined us on this week's broadcast. If you want to see this actual segment, go to our YouTube channel or Facebook, and you can view the whole segment. With that, Rob Drieslein signing off for another week of Outdoor News Radio.